Hello, welcome to Tricia's Cards and Crafts. Here's the third in my series of beginners to stamping tutorials or sessions. This time we're dealing with adhesives. There are lots of different adhesives that you can use for lots of different crafts and things. This is just an introduction. It's up to you what you use. It's your preferences that make a difference. So whatever you find easiest is what you will end up using. I'm just trying to give you an outline of some of the things that are available out there and what is available through Stampin' Up, basically. In the annual catalogue, there's a full sheet of all the different adhesives. This is on page 162 of the annual catalogue. There's a whole sheet of different types of adhesives that you can go for. You don't need all of them. You probably only need a couple. It's up to you what you use. You don't need any of these in particular, but this is where you can get these from. They're starting off with adhesive sheets. I haven't got any of the adhesive sheets. I have had some in the past, and they're brilliant if you want to do if you're doing die cutting, you are doing words, and it's not always easy to put glue onto the die cuts because they're quite small and they're fiddly. Maybe something like this, if you wanted to stick that flat, and you put the adhesive sheet on the back, you cut it out, and then you can just take the adhesive off. You'll probably find when I come to try and do this, it will be fiddly trying to get the glue onto here without getting it all over your fingers as well. So that's what the adhesive sheets are usually used for. The fine glue tip pen, again, I don't have that. I find that I work with the multi-purpose liquid glue. It's got two different ends. There's a fine end, and that's the fine end that I usually use, and there's also a broad end as well at the other end, and that's useful if you're spreading a lot of glue around. This can be quite good. It's a latex glue, and it's very sticky, but it does dry quite quickly, but it gives you a little bit of leeway when you're trying to stick something down. So that's the multi-purpose liquid glue. There's glue dots. You can get these. They come on a roll, and they're tiny little dots of glue. Obviously, I usually pick them up with I can't see it. Oh, here it is. With a pokey tool, because it's easier to pick them up that way, because they don't stick to me then, because they're very sticky. But they're also good if you're sticking something down. I'll show you in a bit. If you want something flat, you can just stick it onto there and it'll go down flat. If you want something a bit raised, you can roll them up a little bit to give you a bit more dimension. So those are the glue dots, and I will be using those in a little while. What have we got? Tear and tape. This is tape that comes on a roll. You stick it onto the card. I'll show you in a moment, and you just tear it. I'll show you how to use that in a second. Stamp and seal, that is this here. It's a tape pen. You take the end off, obviously. You draw it along. You put your finger on this part here so that you've got some you've got grip there, so it's easy to hold. You just pull it along, and I'll show you how to use this as well, because I'll use this for a card on the card that I'm making, or I'll make together. So that's Stamp and Seal. A Stamp and Seal Plus is similar to that. The only thing is it's a bit stronger. This is great for making cards, sticking layers on, sticking other things on. But if you're making things like boxes, if you're doing some construction, then you probably need the Stamp and Seal Plus. Okay, and so that is very similar. It works exactly the same way, and they both are refillable. So you can just get a refill and stick it in, and you're done. It doesn't cost as much then when you do the refills. The Silk and Craft Sheet I don't actually have one because I did have a craft sheet before, so I haven't actually bought another one. Foam adhesive strips, they work very much like dimensionals, but they're just a long thin strip. I haven't got any of those either, but you can just cut them to any length that you want, so it's great. So, and if you're doing shaker cards and you want to create a seal, they're brilliant, because then you've got one full strip, or maybe even two, but you can just about overlap them so that they actually keep everything inside. So that's the foam adhesive strip. Stampin' dimensionals, there's different sizes. There's 2 different sizes. With the white ones you get Stampin' dimensionals, you get 300 of the larger ones, and you get 720 of the smaller pieces. Again, you can use the full one. If you've got something that's small, you can snip into the side pieces and you can get smaller pieces. You use up the whole sheet, so you don't have to worry about that. They also come in black, but the black packs, these come separately, so you get either the large or the small ones, the mini ones. With the black ones you get two mini ones and 2 large ones, and they come with a black core. So if you're doing things with black cards, you've got black layers on your cards and you don't want things to be seen, then it's quite good, because then you can use the black and you don't get a white sort of layer showing in between. It'll be black and it won't show so much. So those are the black ones. I know a lot of people put lines on, I don't know whether I've got a pen here, but they draw lines on their dimensional stickers. It's not going to work so well because this isn't adhesive, but you can put lines on them so that you know when you stick them on that there's still a top on it, so you don't have to worry about that. That's not going to work because it's shiny. So those are dimensionals, and the black ones, the foam adhesive sheets. Oh, sorry, what was that? Foam adhesive strips. Oh, and the foam adhesive sheets. These are great as well if you're cutting out letters, so you can actually cut the whole letter out. If I was going to cut, say, the butterfly, I could cut that out, and then it would also have dimension and it would stand out as well. So that's another thing you can use the adhesive sheets for. And the cling adhesive, that in a few years ago, or a year or so ago, the older versions of the cling stamps were called something else, but they didn't actually cling very well. If you put let's see what I've got here. This is a cling stamp set, but if you stuck the actual back pieces on so that you knew what was going to be on the front, to show the guides, then the stamps wouldn't cling to the blocks. So now they've brought out, so that you can use your older stamps, they've brought out these cling adhesives so that you can actually stick them onto the back so that they will stick to your blocks. Okay, so those are those. There are a few other adhesives that I sometimes use. Until the Stamp and Seal Plus came out, I often use this red liner tape because it is very, very strong. Once you put it on, you're not going to get it off without ripping your paper. So this is another adhesive that I use when I'm doing construction work, if I'm making boxes and things, because it's great. Once it's stuck and you won't move. So if you're using something quite a bit as well, that's great to use for that. If you want to use some sellotape, sometimes if you haven't got anything else and you've got you want to hold something down, you can use tape. What I tend to do, I can't show you because I haven't got anything, I would put it onto either the back of my hand, anything like that, just to take some of the tackiness off it, so that it'll hold it down, but it won't actually, it'll hold it down so I can maybe use a sponge dauber just to keep it there, but it'll actually come off without a mark. So that's something you could use. Another thing, or if you wanted to do die cutting, you can use it to hold the die cuts on. That is another thing that I use this for. These are just post-it notes, but they're strips of post-it notes, and they're sticky all across it, but it's as sticky as a post-it note, so it will come off, and it'll come off quite easily. And these are quite useful to use for doing die cutting as well. I've got a slightly larger version. Instead of using a post-it note, if the stamp will fit onto this, I would take a strip of this off, stamp onto it, and cut it out to use as a mask. And again, this is quite good for that as well. So those are two more types of adhesive. And this is another thing. This is purple tape, and it's a bit like a masking tape. It's, again, I would probably try and de-tack it a bit more before I used it, but you should be able to put it down. I wouldn't put it down on anything to die cut unless I'd taken some of the tackiness off, because it is still quite tacky. But that is part of one of the uses for the purple liner tape as well, purple tape. The other thing I use as well, before I started using the the post-it note tape, is washi tape. This isn't one of the Stampin' Up ones. I haven't got any to hand at the moment, but these are quite useful. You can use them to decorate your cards or your cardstock. You can just put a strip down. It cuts quite easily, it'll rip quite easily, and it's decorative basically, but it will come off usually. This one doesn't want to come off so easily, but again, you could use this when you're doing die cut. Again, by the looks of it, this one particular I wouldn't necessarily use for die cutting. I have got some that I've used in the past for die cutting, and they usually, but with this one I would probably have to take some of the tackiness off again. Just put it on the back of your skin to take some of the oils on your skin, will then take away the tackiness. Okay, so that's washi tape. There's lots of different types of adhesives. It's up to you what sort of adhesive you like to use, or try lots of different things if you can afford it, and then just choose which one you find easiest to use. So we'll just make this card up, and I'll show you some of the different adhesives. With this is simply you just put it down and you tear. Now I find it, because if I want to get a nice straight line, I just use a block, just put the block where I want it to be and tip it and rip it off. Okay, so again, I'll just show you one more time. I'll just put another piece in the middle. We don't really need the other bit in the middle, and rip. Okay, now the only problem with this is there's no leeway where when you put it down, it's down and it sticks. So what some people do, they put, you can't do it with this one so much because this one will, whoops, you also have to make sure that it is actually down quite, so rub it a little bit first. And this is what some people do, they just fold it back. You can put it where you want it on your card. When you've got it where you want it, you can press it down, and then you just tear off the tape, and it's nice and flat and it won't move. With this one I'll use the Tombow, and this is what I tend to use a lot. You don't need a lot, and make sure you move quite quickly when you use it, because otherwise you might end up with too much. I usually do around the edges and then just a bit of a squiggle in the middle, just to make sure. You don't want too much, otherwise it'll squidge out the sides, and I don't put it right to the corners or right to the sides if I can help it. But it has a good grip on it. as we're doing adhesives today, I haven't bothered going through and stamping everything out. I've done it already. Now I'm going to put a little bit of ribbon down. Now to put the ribbon down, just to make sure I get a nice straight line, I'm going to use the stamp and seal, and I'll put down, yeah, it is working, because it's, there we go, and it will come off. This is the other thing that's very useful. It's made of rubber, and it's a bit knobbly, but it will take up almost all different types of adhesive and get rid of it for you, so that you've got a space, you've got a nice, I've got a line, I don't know whether you can actually see it, I've got a line of tape there, and I'm going to put my ribbon over the top. If there's any on either side, I can just use my rubber to take it off. There you go, and now it's no sticky there. Okay, the other thing I'll do now is use my scissors and just trim the ends to make it nice and neat. There we go. So that ribbon is now stuck down with the stamp and seal. I will use, for these I'm going to use some Tombow, just because you can be quite precise with this. It is quite fine when it comes out. If you're gentle, you don't need a lot of pressure, otherwise you will get a blob. I'll put one up here. I'll stick these flat because they're a little bit, there we go, a bit dainty. Put a little bit more on the top there. And one down here. There we go. And then for these butterflies, I'll use the glue dot for this one. Two. Third one. Glue dots are also good if you've got smaller embellishments like sequins and things like that. You can use glue dots with those. And then finally I've got a hello I'm going to stick on, and I'm going to put that on with some dimensionals. I think I'll just use, that's not cut, use this bit. That didn't want to come off. Aha, that's too big. So I wouldn't normally do this with my scissors because I'll get sticky on my blades, which is not a good idea. Maybe that one there we go. So I want this to come up a bit, be raised up. I'll put you up here, there we go, and there is the card. And I've used quite a few different adhesives, so I've used the stamp and seal to stick the ribbon down. Again, I could have used some of the tear and tape, I could have used some of the red liner tape, I could use some of the multi-glue. Probably best not with ribbon to use a wet glue because it will tend to show through. If it's, this one's a velvet ribbon, so it's not going to show through as much, but if it was a satin ribbon or a silk ribbon or one of the other thinner ribbons, then that would show through. We've used Tombow for the flat butterflies, and I used the glue dots to be, so that they've got a bit of dimension for the butterflies, because you can just put it in the middle. And then I used the tear tape on the back of the mat, and on the top layer then I used Tombow and used dimensionals to make the sentiments stand out. Okay, so that's the card for today. Hope you've enjoyed it. I know it's adhesives are not necessarily the most exciting things, but at least you know now all the different types of adhesives that are out there, and what you can use, whatever you enjoy using, what you find best works for you. All right, thank you for joining me today. Hope you'll join me next week. Next week I think we're going to be looking at paper and cardstock. We'll be having a look at the different types, and also perhaps what the best things are for sticking them down with as well. Okay, thanks for joining me. Hope I'll see you again next week. Bye.